DLLS Dallas Stars emergency podcast as we are going to break down the sudden news about Tyler Seguin needing to undergo hip surgery. All of that with Sam Nessler, Sean Shapiro, maybe Craig Ludwig. We'll see how technology treats him. We're trying, so we'll have to wait and see. This emergency pod is brought to you by Indeed. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. That's Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, guys, let's get right to it. It's been an interesting last couple of days, and now obviously we heard the news this morning. It came down about an hour ago from when we are taping this live. Tyler Seguin will need surgery. And Sean, do you want to read the details? Because I saw you had that up right away. Just the specifics about what he needs and the surgery he will have, I believe, on Thursday in New York City.
Yeah, he'll have it Thursday. Let me get it up here exactly. It's he'll have a left side femoral. Oh boy, femoral acetabular. Yeah, femoral acetabular impingement and left side hip labrum are being repaired, and basically, the FAI is the short term we'll use for the rest of the show, and I'm declaring that right now as martial law. FAI. And
man, that's topical.
Left side hip labrum. Sagan is expected to miss 4 to 6 months. That's the kicker. Since that's been out, I have not done the WebMD thing, but trying to get a little bit more and doing a little bit of research from people who learn from people who've had it. I've seen some people who have reached out who have had something similar and talked about they've had a procedure done before like this, but obviously they weren't an athlete or whatever. Essentially, what is going to happen from the details we've been given is they're basically going to shave off part of the hip bone for Seguin. They're going to go in and basically shave off part of the hip bone and then repair repair the labrum after that. And this is not knowing everything about the inside of the human hip, though. This is all certainly related to, you think of Seguin's surgery that caused that he dealt through the 2020 that came after the 2020 it was 2021, right? Like he played through it and then he only played the 3 games, and he had at that time
post-bubble playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. He had a labral tear then. I believe it was he had a couple other hip surgeries then as well. So this is all kind of I don't know for sure, but obviously it's hard not to see things. It's the same part of the body. We can say that for certain, and it is now with Seguin in his recovery time. The big one's 4 to 6 months. I looked it up. 4 months today would be April 5th. The Stars' last regular season game is April 16th. Now I have a hard time believing April 5th is 4 months is the exact timing. This to me, this is regular season ending, and I feel confident using that terminology. I would be surprised otherwise.
Sam, this is something that we knew about being a potential. We unfortunately didn't have enough to report it, but this has been going on. This is not something that's just happened the last day or two. You and I had heard a report/rumor that had been swirling, I want to say a couple weeks ago at least.
Yep.
The Stars were pretty good about keeping it under wraps as far as, not getting the stuff out publicly before today. But this is not exactly something that's been a state secret.
Yeah, and it's been public in some way, knowing that Seguin's been dealing with this stuff as well, right? They announced he wasn't going to play in those back-to-backs. We all just keep hearing, whether it's from Sean or whether it's from other people, that what Seguin has been going through to even play in these games has been just excruciating, and tons of stuff before games, tons of recovery time after games. Essentially, why he wasn't able to play those back-to-backs. You just feel, Sean mentioned he had the hip surgery already. I know it's both sides. He had the left, I think it was left or right, in that 2020, and he had the knee stuff. He's just got so much going on, and he had to do so much to just completely change his career, right? He changed the way he played the game after all those surgeries to be able to stay as a scorer and be able to still put up points, because he was no longer flying up the ice with jamiebenn as fast as he used to. But you just feel for Seguin, right? That's the first thing that comes to my head is just
Yeah.
this guy has gone through so much. He's got off to such a good start again. He's kind of had his own little renaissance the last couple of years. And he's part of the Stars' best line, the NHL's arguably best line. So it sucks. Number one, that's the first thing that came to my head is it's a bummer for Tyler himself. And you just hope that the key here is, like I said yesterday, fixing it, right? You hope here that he misses 5 months. If he misses 5 months and that fixes him to the point where he can play without pain, not deal with all this stuff, and for his future, whether that's playing and post-career, that's the goal. And I hope that's the case.
So we did a whole show yesterday. We actually had this topic leading off, and we did a couple segments, but it's worth sort of summarizing now that we know more. Because yesterday, Sean, this was all hypothetical.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes.
now it's realistic. The Stars' decision, because yesterday we talked about what they could do, whether it's going to be a week. Now, obviously, it's going to be 4 to 6 months. As you said, regular season ending. I think that makes sense because, look, if the short end of the rehab is close to the end of the regular season within 2 weeks, right? Because I believe they would have 6 games left if he came back by about the 5th or the 6th, 6 or 7, depending on if that was, we're getting too specific. The point is, unless they felt confident that he was going to be available to start playing games around that time, which would be a very optimistic viewpoint, then there's no point in rushing him because then they wouldn't be able to use LTIR without having to recapture that. So I think that makes sense. So yesterday we talked a lot about what could you do? Would you, upgrade the defense? Would you upgrade the forwards? Well, now they have some real time to think of, and they've probably been talking about this since we've heard these things for weeks. I'm sure the team's been kicking this around. But Seguin at $9.5 million on his cap, that's the overage. If they can get their salary cap as close to 9.85, excuse me. But just like we've seen in past LTIR, you've got to get close to the upper ceiling and then use the LTIR so you get the most relief. What kind of a pocket war chest do Jim Nill and company have to play with now?
Yeah. So the Stars were already going to be they were on track to be one of the bigger potential buyers at the deadline. They were already on track for that no matter what, because with how they've been managing their cap well and how things set up, they had been it looked like they were probably going to have around $6 million in cap space here at the deadline, not right now, in the deadline. And so now, deadline-wise, if you use LTIR and you're able to maximize it, you could be looking at potentially $16 million in cap space.
Wow.
And that is at the deadline here. And
which is still several months away.
But the point being is, if you use the LTIR, and this is what the LTIR does now, where before that $6 million was a move that cap space was going to be compiled, capital together, everything together, and then be able to use at the deadline itself. The LTIR changes two things. One, it's this big, it's now like a savings account right there that you can access at any point for Jim Nill, right? Like right now it would have been like, hey, there's a guy we might want that's making $4 million against the cap or whatever. Stars would not be able to make that move right now without using LTIR. Now, if they use LTIR, they effectively have this cap. Think about it like a savings account where, like, hey, we can activate this whenever we want to get things going.
Can we call it a home equity line of credit? A HELOC?
Yeah, something like that.
You can dip into it whenever they feel.
Exactly. And the other thing it allows too, from a Stars perspective with Seguin and the timing so you get that. Now you think about what 16 million means at the deadline, right? That's if I gave you 16 million to go find players in cap space. Now assets moving in figuring out what you move to make that happen, obviously a whole nother discussion, but 16 million is, you could find 3 players like that. Like you're talking about you're not just being like,
without requiring salary retention, no less.
Exactly. You're like, we're not talking about just like, do they have to pick between the defenseman and the forward? You could be like 16 million. You could go get a full line for 16 million if you wanted to, right? So it's the Stars now become this big player because of what they have in their back pocket. How much they'll use it will be fascinating because Jim Nill also isn't going to try to blow the bank for anything. But there's now this whole spot.
Well, let's bring in our other member. Oh, there he is.
Yes.
Framed as
Luddy.
well as Sean does. Luddy's got his milk,
He's drinking milk.
as of course he is. Luddy, I got a little OJ this morning. Sean's probably got the coffee.
I definitely have the coffee going.
All right. So, Craig, what's your first reaction when you saw this today?
Hello?
Are you on like a 10-second delay?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. What do you got?
I got milk.
He's got milk.
I don't think.
No, but
I think he was talking while you were talking.
Oh, he probably didn't hear me. So my big question to you, Lud, is that you saw the Seguin news, right? This morning, it came about an hour ago. What was your first reaction? Because we did a big segment yesterday when it was still a bit hypothetical. Now we know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for Tyler. It's unfortunate for the fans. It's unfortunate for Mason Marchment and Matt Duchene. So, I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is when you see the time frame. You know, there's a disparity in how long it is. So, is it 3 months? And hopefully, it's not the 6-month thing. Because when you look at the window, you're hoping that he gets back in time to get a few games in. So when he hits playoffs, he's closer to up to speed. But you know, and again, I'm sure before I got on, you guys are probably talking about the dollar amount that's available here. So, you know, now I think if you're going to be able to do that, I think as an organization or management, you're sitting down and saying, okay, what do we need to put us in the best situation we can if we do have this money to use? So, you know, we talked about it yesterday, I guess it was, about, you know, is it up front or is it in the back? My opinion is if you can get an upper tier defenseman that's willing to move and it works and it's not long term, like Sean was talking about the other day. We were talking about Trouba. You know, there's some length on that one, right? So does that change? And what does the team if you do something like that, what are they going to ask in return? So, you know, there's a lot of things there. And, but again, I go back to the line because it's been a dominant line. And it'll be interesting to see who slides in there. I don't know if you guys talked about it, but I mean, is it going to be Logan or, you know, is there going to be a revolving door trying to find out who can replicate as much as that line? Because it's only one game when Tyler didn't play, was Utah the other night. And you could tell that there was a difference when Tyler wasn't on that line.
No, it's funny, Lud, you bring that up because that was literally going to be my next question because it's been so good. I think that there's been times this year. Remember, Seguin had that 3-game injury stint, and he didn't play the second night against Finland. Throw that one out because the whole team struggled in that trip. But there's been some games where Seguin was injured where I thought Duchene and Marchment still looked good. Last year, they were downright hopeless at times if that line wasn't together. I have, based on the way Duchene and Marchment are playing this year, I have a little bit of confidence that they'll be able to keep that going without Seguin. But Luddy's point is massive, and it's a big one because we're getting, you know, starry-eyed because of LTIR space and what they could bring in. But number one is that's been their best line. Now, lately, Rope Hintz and Wyatt Johnston have been looking better, and that's been really important because they need that upper-level depth on their attack to really be dangerous against the other good teams in the league. But do they have the answer for the Seguin deputy in-house, or do they need to go find somebody to complement that line outside and use part of that LTIR rather than looking to bolster another line? Do they need to find somebody that can play with Duchene and Marchment at least through the regular season?
So Sam, Sean, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think we got to go back a little bit too, because with any pairing, with any lines, there's something called chemistry. And this group of 3 didn't just evolve on day 1 this year. They've been playing together. And so, again, I go back to how you look at lines. And typically for me, it's always been you have, two guys that click together, and then you find a third guy that complements those two. So what are you looking for? If you are looking to replace Tyler for the time being up there, and how does that chemistry come about? Because you got this Four Nations deal coming up, and I'm sure there's going to be people that they're going to put together, and they're going to go, oh man, what a great line this is going to be. But if they don't click, they don't click. And that's in a short span, right? And so now, yes, there's time here for that chemistry to develop, but these guys have been doing this for a while. It's the reason they're so good. I have heard that in the summer they get together and they're out there working on things, just the three of them. So there's a commitment from them to come back and be as good as they have been. And so that's the interesting part to me. I just wonder if you don't have the Tyler Seguin from a leadership standpoint and things like that for the time being, but can Logan kind of be the best guy there? Or is it Wyatt that drops down and Logan goes up there? Whatever. To me, that's the interchangeable parts right now, because I think you guys all agree, if there's a department that you're a part of this group that you can kind of tweak right now, or would like to tweak if you could, to me, it's the guys in the back. I mean, if you can add, was it when Tanev came here, wasn't he the perfect guy? Now, he's the perfect guy, but he was, so that tells me that they were looking for that guy last year. So now Tanev's gone, and they bring in three new guys. Can you bring in another guy that can click with somebody that can play with Miro? I don't know. I mean, we think anybody can play with Miro, but to free Miro up like he is on his left side.
Yeah, well, I know Sean brought up the point of using it. I don't even remember what Owen called the savings account, but the key that I think Luds is talking about is I don't see the Stars going and saying, okay, Seguin's out, let's use this right away and bring in somebody. I think that the key is to do exactly what Owen and Luds were just talking about and see, how do we replace him in the lineup right now? Can we, number one? And if not, then you start to evaluate. Because if they shuffle a little bit of the lines up, let's say Stankoven goes up and plays on that line, they bring somebody up and they kind of fill it in, and the forwards look great, then the decision becomes really easy. All right, well, if we do want to use it, we know where we need to use it. We go look for a defenseman, or we push it to the cap and use that 16 altogether, or whatever it is. But the interesting thing to me, off of what Owen was just saying too, is I just wrote about this after the win in Utah. We've talked all in the preseason. The Stars have kind of an idea of what they wanted their lines to look like, right? I believe they wanted that Johnston, Hintz, Robertson, Marchment, Duchesne, Seguin, Benn, Bork, Stankoven as their top three lines, and then mixing in the Blackwell, Dodonov, Beck, whoever else on that fourth line. That's what it felt like they wanted. Now that's completely changed. Now you just took a huge piece out, and they no longer have that option at all. So it's really going to be about fill it in. I think Stankoven's a perfect fit. I think he's a good shooter like Seguin. He's really good at finding the open spots. He had a great chance in scoring from the slot in Utah. And I think that he's the best option. But as Lud said, we all preseason, all summer, whatever, Stankoven, Johnston seem to be our fit on the top line. So right now it's kind of who fits best on the top line, or whatever you want to call the line, and who fits best on this line. And it could be an interchange and just kind of seeing how it goes. But I think that's important to note what Sean said is
Hey,
I
Sean,
don't see the Stars overreacting.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sean, let me ask you, like, right now, do you think that Wyatt, what we see now, Wyatt is starting to fit in with Rupe and Robo, right? Or at least Rupe. Yeah. So maybe you don't tinker with that line. Maybe you leave that Wyatt. When I mentioned Wyatt before, it's just because I find him an interchangeable part. Maybe you just got to leave that one alone, because now maybe they can take the place of what the Duchesne line was. So maybe it's just trying to find the right piece to fit on that right side with these other two guys.
Yeah, I think the other thing to kind of, on that note too, one of the things I think the Stars have, there's two things about timing that come into mind for me. First is you have some time to figure out right now what you need and everything like that. You also have the ability to, I'm a big proponent of making moves earlier, because I think one of the things when you make moves at the deadline, you see some guys, like one of the reasons that everyone in Dallas raves about what Matt Zuccarello did when he stepped in right away in such a small time frame is because it was so rare. Like deadline acquisitions, while they're always fun and good to draw on paper, very rarely do they step in that instantly. They take some time. And so I'm a big proponent of, if you're going to make a move, shop way before the deadline. That's one of my views. You shop early. So does that mean you shop in December? Maybe, maybe not, but you should be looking in January and February as you figure this out. The other interesting thing that Luds brought up, and I just want to make sure I make a note on this. And Owen, you can decide whether we talk about this now or go deeper down. This team, I think, is it's a team that's got a bunch of leaders and everything like that, but it will be interesting to see the dynamic of this team without a Tyler Seguin in the room right now, right? And I know John. I don't know if John's dinging today on emergency pods or not, but we've talked all about how Joe Pavelski was kind of that
Oh,
additional,
yes.
that additional leader that helped Jamie become a better captain. And Tyler was always that perfect foil. Like, I think when in the Stars leadership group, Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin are the ideal kind of foil as a leadership group, where Jamie is a little bit more stoic, a little bit more quiet, follow me as I do, and when I do say something, it means something more. Seguin was always that guy who he was a little bit more talkative, and as he grew into that leadership role, he was the one that took up some of the air and the volume so Jamie could have a little bit more of that space. It's going, and I'm not saying like the leadership's going to crumble or anything like that. I'm not going or saying anything like that. I am interested to see who steps up into that space, because in the past, if there was an injury or even the year Tyler only played 3 games, there was a guy who wore number 16 there, because I just don't want to hear the ding in my headphones. It was
You got it anyway.
yeah. So I'm interested to see that element of this too. It's not just the on ice perspective; it's also this team dynamic. He is such an important part of that team dynamic and that group and everything. And while he will, I'm sure, try to be around the team as much as possible once he is able to after the surgery, there's a reality of you're not seeing Tyler Seguin as a regular part of that group or that leadership or that voice in the room until April now.
Luds, this is a good one for you to weigh in on. What are you thinking on the leadership side?
Well, Tyler's going to be around. It's not like he's not there.
Well,
So
yes and no, though. Like
it's totally different than being on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's funny now. I text a doctor friend of mine this morning, and he's texting me back and forth. I wish there was a way I could bring him in. I knew how to bring him in, because I was asking him about, this kind of procedure. I don't even know what it is. I don't know if they're redoing something. I don't know what you guys all have for news-wise. I wish I could bring him in. He could give us an idea of a time frame and stuff like that. Although I know that you've already seen it, or something's out there for a window. So anyways, what was the question again on?
Just the question of Sean's thought of how it affects, losing a guy that's clearly a leader in the room for an extended period of time. And of course, on the ice play, right? He's having a great season and he's connecting with that line. We talked about that. But as a guy who's watched players get hurt and go in and out of the dressing room, does it have a huge impact? Or do the Stars have enough guys with Jamie Benn and Miro Heiskanen and Esa Lindell and Matt Duchene now in his second year with the team? Jakeoettinger is a leader now. How about Mason Marchment stepping in? Is there enough that this won't be that much missed from that angle?
Yeah, I agree that there is enough there. But there's not Tyler Seguin there. And
yeah, that's the key.
So, I was a big proponent when Joe decided to call it quits. And I spoke to a couple of people. I said, for me, it's a no-brainer. You bring him in now and have him around, and have him be in the room, have him being around, have him be a guy that there was a long time ago, I was kind of put in that kind of role, and I had this office, and like, guys want to talk about something, come up and talk. Just you bounce things off them. What's going good, what's going right. Depending on how Tyler can get around and things like that, I would be asking Tyler to be as available as he can, because just having him around, he's going to be going through his rehab, whatever that's going to all involve and stuff like that. But to be able for the guys to see him and know that he's there, he's still there helping them out. There's advice I'm sure that Tyler has offered to younger guys and as a group and things like that. So I think you try to keep in as involved as you can. But you're right. I think the growth, and I think for players that come to new organizations, and we've seen this with Patrick Sharp and O'Doyle and stuff like that, and I've talked to him, it's not easy to step in your first year, and just because they bring you in because you're a leader, right? It's not easy to step into a new room, and you have personalities and that are in there, and good players and that are leaders and things like that, to jump in and start saying things. You have to start to feel comfortable, and when do you jump in, when don't you jump in? But I agree that Marchment, Duchene, they've got that now, so they can pick up that kind of slack right there. I think Wyatt's there. Logan, probably, I don't know how he is as far as vocally, but the conversation would be, you know what, we need your leadership now. We need you guys to be able to speak up. And and what you're doing is, I'd be getting shirts made up. Let's do it for Tyler. And it's not like Tyler's gone, but it's just like, Tyler I had said this a while ago, that there was a similarity, only one tiny similarity, is there was a point, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, that Tyler had gone 13 years in between winning a Stanley Cup. It reminded me of myself, because the first one I won in Montreal, then you get to the end of the line and it was 13 years later. Well, you believe that you can do it, and then you start to wonder, are you at the end of the rope? And is this going to happen? And then all of a sudden you hear little things like players saying, let's do it for him. Let's get him another one. So, I think that's motivation for those guys. It's motivation for Tyler to get back, obviously, and be part of this. And I'm sure he's going to be back in playoffs. There's no doubt in my mind that that's going to happen, but it's in the interim, that this team stays on the rails, so to speak.
All right, guys, we have only a couple minutes left before they're going to tell us to stop, because it will turn from an emergency pod into a full-on show. So, Sam, any final thoughts that you want to add before we sign off this morning, knowing that we have a pregame show at 8:30 Central Time tonight?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting week. We knew Tyler was out, so now this week doesn't change, right? We still need to see who's going to fill in. We still need to see what those lines are going to look like, and it's going to be a challenge. They got three games against pretty good teams on this trip, and it'll be interesting to see how they get the lines going.
Sean?
Two things. One, we have to follow up on those conversations with Lutz about leadership and everything. Like, they're going to keep Tyler around. It's going to be really. I was just looking at the schedule while Lutz was talking about it. January 7th through 14th, the Stars go Rangers, Flyers, Canadians, Senators, Maple Leafs. Basically, I think it's 4 or 5 games in a span of 7 or 8 days on the road. That's going to be the
Eastern
type of trip. Yeah, that's going to be one of those trips where Lutz has talked about those guys getting louder and those guys stepping into leadership roles. That's going to be one of those trips where we probably, and it would be an interesting probably thing to check in on around that time of, hey, who stepped into the Tyler Seguin voice role when you have that type of trip like that. That's one thing that comes to mind. The other thing that just is, we're having the emergency pod about this right now, and we're going to talk about names, and that's going to be an ongoing subject, and we're looking at this. The other thing that it's the thing that I kind of take away from all this, remember all this, is this is something that, whether he'll say it publicly or not, Jim Nill was effectively planning for this for months now. This is something from a Stars perspective that management and the Stars have been planning for months now, whether it was that they knew it was going to happen or it was a possibility of it. And I go back to, I remember one of the things, because Jim's pretty good about keeping things close to the vest, but one of the things that he let slip out at one point was the Ben Bishop trade, right? So when the Stars made the Ben Bishop trade, he let it slip that he had been working on the Ben Bishop trade for a year before that. Like, he had been working on the Bishop trade and so there's some deal is going to be made, something's going to happen, and whether it's made public, whether it's uncovered or not, there's something that there was an October or November conversation that Jim Nill had with another team that is going to lead to a move sooner than later. It's going to have those are kind of the legs of that. And I think that's one of the things that when you look at the Stars doing this, and we talked the other day about that yesterday about the Thanksgiving cut line. You get to worry about luxury problems right now, and this is a luxury problem. The Stars are now looking at, how do we do this? And the other one last thing, and I'm just going to say, I know you guys are all doing the pregame show, so I'll say one last thing, and then I'll let you guys go and let you guys do everything else that you need to do. This is also, Jim Nill's a big window guy, right? Like, windows and doing this now still keeps Tyler Seguin in the fold for next year, right? Tyler Seguin still has this year and the following 2 seasons on this. The Stars could have pushed this down the line. They could have done that. If he does it in the offseason, who knows how much this impacts the 25-26 season, right? Yeah. So I think that's another important note on the timing of this. It's this season, it's LTIR chat, it's all of that, but it's also, by doing it now, you are making sure this is something, hopefully, that doesn't require it to impact you for the additional 2 years of Tyler Seguin's deal.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Luds, we'll give you the final word as Sean brings that up. If they let Tyler limp along and suffer all year only to have it in the off season, then next year he's completely affected by this. Whereas he could still come back, be ready for playoffs at some level of Tyler Seguin, hopefully pain-free, and then have a full off season to get ready for 25, 26. So I like the fact that they're not waiting on this.
Yeah, and I would say that this didn't just pop up. They knew it at the end of last year, and then they monitored probably through the summer. Let's let Tyler get off to the start. Let's see where he's at. Let's keep in contact every single day, every game. And then they made the decision at some point that, hey, if it doesn't get any worse or any better at a certain point, here's what we're going to do. So, I agree with that. I mean, and like you said, you've got, and the other thing is about bringing players in, that cap's going up, right, in a couple of years from now. So depending on what that contract looks like, who they bring in, it may fit better than what we think. And we know that Jim Nill and Mark Janko, the capologists, they know what they're doing there. So I just want to mention, Sam, do you happen to notice my backdrop? I did this for you.
It's nice. That's real nice.
By the way, Luds, the chat is asking,
cheating?
is that victory green walls?
Yeah, I bleed green, for God's sakes. But I just want the bedroom. Next time Sam does it, maybe a couple pillows on your bed or something like that.
Is that a beer on your nightstand as well?
No, I shouldn't show you that. Whoops.
Well, on that wonderful note, even Ben, our GM, noticed it. Guys, we will pause this conversation until this evening. Sean is not going to be on the pregame show, but Sam and Luds and I will be in the studio. Stars and Kings at 9 o'clock. Our pregame show starts at 8:30 Central Time, and I'm sure we'll have lots of conversation about how they, in the near and future term, deal with the loss of Tyler Seguin. Thanks, guys, for being here this morning, and we will see you tonight. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you for the pregame at 8:30 Central Time tonight.
We all silly like the mayor.